What's up, good people? This is Chris Crazy House, and welcome to some Chris Crazy commentary. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, mainly because I've wanted to concentrate just on putting out artwork and animation on this channel. But there's something that has come up within the realm of pop culture that I felt like I really needed to talk about. And that is the new Netflix series, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. And let me just start from the beginning here, okay, so people can understand my frustration when I get to the problems I had with this series. So I am actually a big fan of the Scott Pilgrim comic book series. It was something that I didn't get into when it first started, I can admit that. But when the film came out, you know, I saw a lot of people talking about it, and mainly my sister-in-law, who was a big fan of Scott Pilgrim. She was very eager to see the film version of it. So I decided to, you know, like I'll go ahead and read the graphic novel. I'll read the first one, right? And I figure, like, if I like it, then maybe I'll go check out the movie too. Come to find out, I read the first graphic novel and I enjoy every bit of it. You know, I enjoy the artwork, I enjoy the very quirky story that they had in there, I enjoy the characters of, you know, just Scott Pilgrim, Ramona, and really just the scene of it is what kind of hooked me. You know, it reminded me a lot of my own, you know, bachelor years, you know, just kind of living in an apartment and hanging out with friends at night, listening to independent bands and stuff like that, meeting up with girls and going on dates and stuff. So it really hit me right there because it very much reminded me of my own young adult life, post-college years, right? And, you know, I wound up going on to read some of the other graphic novels, and, you know, I have the whole collection behind me. You know, I haven't done a live stream in forever on this channel, but those who remember my live streams know I have my library behind me on screen, and literally right behind me, over top of my head, is the entire collection of Scott Pilgrim, the colored version. I have the entire black and white original versions on digital. I bought them digitally, okay? So, big Scott Pilgrim fan. You know, I wasn't the biggest fan of the movie per se. I thought, you know, just because some of the actors and the way they kind of try to truncate that entire story into one movie, I wasn't as big a fan of it. It was okay, all right? And I know there's a lot of people who are big fans of it, so I'm not mad at it, is what I'm saying. I was a huge fan of the video game. I thought the video game fit perfectly with the aesthetic of the characters and how they kind of mesh and meld into this video game type setting, you know, just out of the blue, you know, as a weird mix of, you know, comedy, reality, video game, pop culture, and everything else all mixed into one. So I enjoyed the hell out of the video game, right? So when they announced that they were finally going to do an animated version of Scott Pilgrim, I was very excited, okay? You know, I always thought Scott Pilgrim lended itself very well to animation. I've seen some fan animations out there before, and I think that the way that the story is done and how quirky it is and just the action in it, it will work perfectly as an anime. You know, it already has that type of storytelling anyway within the graphic novels themselves. So I was very much looking forward to a animated series, and the fact that they were doing it on Netflix, I was like, cool, I'll be able to watch all the episodes at once, right? So they showed the first trailer, and I was, you know, looking forward to seeing it. After seeing the first trailer, I posted it, reposted it on my social media platform because I was very much looking forward to seeing this series. And finally, you know, I came home late after work, and, you know, my family was sleeping, so I was like, good chance I can go sit down, relax, and check out maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes of Scott Pilgrim, right? And I saw that they were only, you know, just 26 minutes or so, so I was like, cool, that'll give me some time. I can actually sit and watch a few episodes and get into it. And I turned it on and everything seems to be going fine, right? It's just like the comic book. And, you know, the animation style and everything looks amazing. I really love the musical performances from the Scott Pilgrim's band, you know, Sex Bomb. I love how it's, you know, animated and shown. So I'm really enjoying it. And I really like seeing this in an animated form. Get to, you know, introducing the evil X's from Scott Pilgrim. So you know, I like how they were adding a little more to that with, you know, actually showing Gideon at the beginning and showing how he's actually sending out Patel to be the first evil X that Scott Pilgrim's going to face. And the infamous scene happens where they fight at the concert, and out of nowhere, Scott Pilgrim loses and he dies. And I'm like, is this a dream? Is he going to come back and, you know, finish the fight like he's supposed to? What's going on here? You know, we don't even get, you know, Patel doing the dance or the song and, you know, unleashing the little demon women and stuff like that. So I'm just like, what's going on here? And, you know, that's the end of the episode. And then I go watch the second episode and we're at Scott Pilgrim's funeral. So he's dead. And that is how this series is going to go now. This is like an alternate version of what happened in the actual Scott Pilgrim comic books. And they're going with it. You know, and now it's all about focusing on Ramona and her, you know, having to deal with her evil exes herself, right? And so the title of the show, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, has become literal. He literally takes off in the first episode. And when I saw that, I'm just like, oh my God, like it just like, I got this really, you know, sinking, disappointed feeling. It came back to me like, just like that Masters of the Universe series that came out a few years ago on Netflix. Remember that? When, you know, that series that Kevin Smith worked on, Masters of the Universe Revelations, and they advertised it as this is going to be the new He-Man series and stuff, and they killed off He-Man in the first episode and got rid of him, and he disappears, and it's all about Teela and her strong independent sisters going on adventures throughout Eternia, right? That's the whole thing. And I'm just like, really? This is what this series has become? Scott Pilgrim is the exact same way. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is the exact same way. They get rid of Scott Pilgrim at the beginning. So, needless to say, as someone who is a big fan of Scott Pilgrim and the story and the concept all encompassed in one, I was very disappointed at this. You know, I thought that we were actually going to get an animated adaptation of Scott Pilgrim. Now, listen, I understand that things change as far as like going from one medium to another. When you're doing an adaptation of something, it can't always just be one for one, panel for panel, scene for scene, exactly the same. I get that. That's fine. You know, and I had no problem with that, especially as someone who's, you know, for years, you know, decades, I watched anime based on different mangas out there, right? So I know that things are going to change a little bit, right? And that's what I was expecting. I was expecting maybe they might reposition certain things, or, you know, maybe have characters on screen a little bit longer than they did before in the book, or whatever. I'm thinking that's what's going to happen. Like an example I can give you, if anyone's here is a fan of Bio Booster Armor Guyver, in the manga, the evil character of Lisker, who becomes Guyver 2, he gets killed off pretty quickly in the manga. But when they got to the new animated series, they don't kill him off at the beginning. They let him live for a little bit longer because he's an interesting character. And he got to see him interact with other characters that he didn't get to interact with because he was just dead in the books, right? But now you get to see him interact with Gio. You get to see him interact and have a fight against Guyver 3. So he still dies the same way, you know, eventually. But it's still, they keep him around for a little bit longer. Same way with A Song of Ice and Fire. That book is a lot different from the Game of Thrones series. They keep characters around a little bit longer, but the overall structure still remains the same, which is what I was expecting from Scott Pilgrim. And I did not get that in that series. And once again, it was a big disappointment, a big letdown. And I feel like I feel like they were just immediately just doing the okey doke on the fan base. Like people like myself who were really excited about this. It'd have been different if they had advertised it as it is, letting people know that this is going to be an alternate or a different interpretation of the original Scott Pilgrim story. If they had just said that, then I would have known not to get into this. But that's not how they advertised it. Even if you go look on Netflix, that's not, the description of the show, that's not what they give there. Okay? So you wouldn't know what you're getting into until you watched it. I understand you don't want to give spoilers, but you need to at least tell people what they're getting. You can't just pull the rug from under them. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like, and I know some people think that that's clever when you quote unquote subvert expectations, but there's such thing as subverting expectations, and then there's what they did here, which it felt like I went out to shake someone's hand and then they kicked me in my stomach and gave me a stone cold stunner. That's what it felt like. I didn't feel like I was dealing in a fair situation because I didn't know what was coming. I thought we were going to do a handshake, and you wound up kicking me and stunning me, and now I'm flipping back and forth over the ring and I'm knocked out, right? So that's what it felt like to me. And I know there's a lot of people out there that they keep using the term bait and switch, and I really don't want to be associated with a lot of those people on the anti-woke side of things, right? I get it. Both, in my opinion, both sides are ridiculous in this discussion, but I understand that sometimes those people can be a little over the top and ridiculous as well. And, they're calling it a bait and switch. And, when you make stories like this and you're not honest with your fan base and your audience about what's coming, you give credence to these things. You give credence to whatever theories these people might have. And I mean, it looks like an agenda. You'll say there is no agenda, but when you go ahead and, you advertise a certain property and it has a male protagonist, and then you kill the male protagonist off in the first episode and just make it all about the women, what else are people supposed to think? At one end of the spectrum, you could say there's an agenda, and at the other end of the spectrum, you can just say these people are hacky writers and they don't know how to write anything else. It's almost as if these people are doing their own fan fiction of what they feel a concept should be, rather than trying to do the actual original concept, right? It's like they might have their own story, but they know no one will pay attention to it if they put out this story that they came up with, this original story. So they have to get a classic IP to tell the story they want to tell, which I don't like at all. Like, just leave the IPs the way they are. And I know what people are going to say, that Brian Lee O'Malley, the creator of Scott Pilgrim, was involved with this. And if he is if he's involved in a really integral way, then I mean, I can't say anything but sell out. He just sold out his own property for that. Now, I tend to believe that, because I know how things work in Hollywood, and I've seen this before, where creators will license off their projects or their ideas to these studios, and these studios just basically do whatever they want. So I'm wondering, like, how much of an integral part was he in this creation? I know they're saying he is, but they always do that. They always say the creator was involved because they want the original fans to be accepting of what they're making, right? And even the director of the live action movie, I think he was an executive producer, but an executive producer just means you might have signed off somewhere and you got a paycheck or something, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that they were truly involved as far as like the creative part and the creative process of the film. So you never know, and unless I could talk to them personally, you'll never know, right? But like I said, I've seen that before, where people will, sell off or, license off their concept, and it completely gets messed up in the end, and they really have no control over how it's portrayed on screen. They could have just taken this Scott Pilgrim and did their own little story the way they wanted to do it, and not the way the creator intended. We saw what happened with Star Wars, right? George had his own ideas for what he wanted done with the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and they completely ignored that and did their own thing, right? So, I mean, I don't know how many people here are Scott Pilgrim fans or how many people here actually watch the new series on Netflix. I don't recommend it. I know, and see, I know Scott Pilgrim is an acquired taste, so I know a lot of people don't even know what it is or even enjoy it. I like it, but I know there's a lot of people out there that have no idea about it or don't know or not into the concept. I've always enjoyed it, and I can tell you that you're not getting an accurate representation. If you want an accurate representation, just go read the graphic novels. Like, they're available to buy, they're easy to find, and I'm so glad I have my graphic novels, because I'll just go with that. I'd rather go with that. And once again, I was never a big fan of the movie, but after this series, the movie just moved up in likability. The movie is more of a faithful adaptation than this cartoon is, which is a shame. You know, you thought it would be the other way around, because animation is usually able to hit things a lot better, but not in this case. The live action is done a way better. It's just that they truncated the story and changed the ending because the ending was not done at that time in the comic books, but it's completely different. You know, the animation is just not that at all. And even I didn't watch the whole thing, but from what I heard about what the actual ending is to this animated series, it's really bad. Then I really don't want anything to do with what they were watching now. So, I mean, you guys can let me know how you feel about it in the comments section. I'd like to hear your opinions if you sat and watched the whole thing. But Netflix, you gotta stop this, man. You guys gotta stop this. Like, it was bad enough with Masters of the Universe. It was bad enough what you did with Cowboy Bebop. Stop it. Stop messing up people things that people like, just so you can put whatever nonsense you want to put on there, or whatever mandates you have. You want to put that in these things. Stop doing that. Okay? Have some have some respect for the fan base out there. Stop messing people's stuff up like that. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think. Anyway, this is Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.